Welcome to the Archetypal Mosaic. This is Mikhail Tank. Today's guest is an extraordinary elder of society in Berkeley, Malcolm Margolin, the creator and founder of Heyday Publications. Welcome.
Well, thank you. So being an elder just came on. It comes on if you live long enough.
Exactly. And if you can help people just by being natural and creating beautiful things, if you can describe how you became a publisher, what interested you in that?
What interested me I began as a writer, and I wrote a couple of books and some articles. But then at one point I published my own book. And there was something in the publishing of that book that I loved. I love the writing. I love the thinking. I love what writing does to you. There was this wonderful basket weaver that I knew named Julia Parker. And I helped create the California Indian Basket Weavers Association. And we were out at this weaving conference, and all the wonderful old weavers were there. People like Vivian Hailstone, people like Georgina Trull, people like Norma Turner. This was many years ago. It was up at Hooper Reservation. And I look around at Julia and I say, Julia, this is amazing. The best people in the world seem to be attracted to basketry. And she says, Malcolm, you don't understand. It's the baskets that make us this way. And I think it looks like as a publisher, we publish books. I think the books we publish create us. And I think that you end up creating yourself around what you do. And I found that writing was solitary, writing was partial. I think the whole book, a book is not finished until somebody's read it. And I think and as a writer, I was able to be responsible not only for the writing of the book, but for the typesetting, the design, the merchandising, the promoting. And I think you can be as creative and have integrity in all these things as much as in the writing.
How did you transform this one-man, high-quality press into one of the most respected publishing houses in the entire Northern California?
Good luck. We published some books that worked well, and I think that for me it's a matter of pride in doing good books, but there's also a matter of shame. I think if somebody gives me their manuscript and I produced it badly, if the design wasn't good, if the editing wasn't good, I'd be so ashamed to face them that it would be terrible. And in some ways I come from a culture of shame.
Which culture is this?
Jewish.
And how so?
Well, we always seem to be ashamed of something. We cultivated guilt and shame for many years. And when I escaped that culture, I could hardly wait to get rid of guilt and hardly wait to get rid of shame. Later on I met some people that didn't have guilt. And it was the most horrible thing that I'd ever seen. They could screw you and never feel it. And I think that guilt and shame, as long as they don't take over your life, they're necessary.
They're necessary.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I come from that culture, and I think it's a very individual thing about guilt and shame. I think sometimes when people make you feel that way, it's up to you to throw it off your back. But I don't see it as necessarily cultural, but it's interesting that you do. I mean, you have definitely lots of experience about that. Now, tell me, as a major publisher who has a very specific niche, which is the state of California. What is it about? That includes Native Americans, that includes nature and bears. I saw a book on bears that you guys published. What is it about this particular state that has enraptured you for life?
I'm not sure that it does. I think that if I'd been living in Indiana, I would be the best publisher in Indiana. I think that I tend to be regional because I'm not good at systems. I'm good at meeting people. I'm good at specifics. But these larger systems I'm not very good at. And with California, I can travel around the state. I know everybody. I know the people we're dealing with. And it's that intimate knowledge that I like. And once you get beyond that intimate knowledge, you're into another world that I don't function very well in that world. I was with my friend Frank Lapina the other day up at the Maidu Museum, and we're talking about Indian religions. He's a Wintu ceremonialist and artist, and we're talking about Indian religions. And with Indian religions, you end up having sanctity lies in particular places, and the place is sacred. Rocks have life and meaning. mountains have meaning, rivers have power. The power is in the land around you. With Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, these other religions, we've separated from place, and we made our religion portable. We can bring it with us, and you bring religion with you by packaging it as dogma, by packaging it as tenet. And there's something about that I think you end up not understanding the power and the ferocity of the world, the beauties of the world. You end up being more abstract. And I've never been able to get into that abstraction.
Interesting. We're sitting in a publishing house.
No, we're not.
Well, what is
It's a bookstore.
A bookstore. Do they have a press here too?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's University Press books, and my wonderful friend Bill McClung is letting us use the store.
Okay.
But it sells university books that are published by university presses.
Okay. So, dear audience, if you hear clinking in the background, they're doing a form of construction. Now, in the meantime, when we return to the show, so we're going to discuss Native American culture. You brought up something very, very important, which is respect for the land and rocks and everything around us. Now, is there a way, for example, for me, as somebody who comes from a different culture, I have stones and rocks and many other things which I respect tremendously, where they come from, who made them, what kind of power they possess. How do you think we can integrate these beautiful cultural aspects into our current modern day society?
Sir Malcolm,
How are you, Paul?
pleasure to see you.
Just to let you know, you're on the radio show because we're doing an interview.
Pardon me.
So you're welcome to talk if you'd like. Just say who you are.
Hang in, Bill.
Bill, you're the founder of this place, right?
I am.
Nice to meet you.
Bill McClung is my name.
Nice to meet you, Mikhail Tank. Would you like to say anything special about Malcolm and his work?
Malcolm's a decent guy. Done some good work. He wrote an article recently, which I just read, about publishing in the 1970s.
Yeah, that's what I just gave you. I just gave it to you. So you already read it.
I received it from someone else,
Okay.
but it was an excellent article,
Yeah, thanks.
although it didn't mention the University of California Press.
No, they're looking for a new publisher.
Looking for a new publisher?
Yeah. UC Press is looking for a new publisher.
Oh, that's right, a new director.
Yeah.
Are you going to apply?
Hey, listen.
You would be a good director of the University of California Press.
Oh yeah. I think all those meetings would do me in. I think the tolerance of people for boredom and for sitting around having these endless discussions is so beyond me.
Let me take one quick photo of the two of you for the marketing of the thing.
So, look, my belly is expanding.
Come down. Come join us. Here we go. Great.
So what radio is this?
This is going to be on, it's called Archetypal Mosaic is the show, and it's going to be on YouTube, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. So it'll be on the major channels and venues. Previously I had a show on KPFK, which is KPFA's sister station, but now it's more broad.
Good.
And your interlude is part of the show now. So it's wonderful.
Great, great.
Thank you for letting us use the space.
Well, you're quite welcome. So, we're about to have a meeting, but we can meet out there.
Yeah.
We'll meet out there. You continue here. Good to see you, Malcolm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. We'll leave that interlude just as it is.
Okay. So that's Bill McClung. He was an editor at UC Press for years, and he's opened this University Press bookstore that specializes in books from university presses.
It's fantastic to have him on the show as well, spontaneously. So now, when we return back to talking about Native American culture and how it, this is Berkeley, and this is the natural flow of Berkeley, so it's a special show. So if we talk about Native American culture and how it incredible respect for life. How can that be integrated into our culture?
I don't think it can be imitated. I don't think we can just take the trappings of it. I think we have to understand the spirit of it all. And the spirit of it all, I think, is what I've seen in my 45 years of dealing with California Indians has been a perception that they were clean and pure, that they worshiped Mother Earth, that they walked around thanking Mother Earth all day long. These were not the people I knew. The people I knew were into poisonings. They were into spirits. There were places where you couldn't go. The earth was not necessarily benevolent. The earth was fierce and powerful, and you had to respect it. And it could give you strength. It could take strength away from you. It could destroy you. And there was something about that spirit of the world that they understood it, and they understood it in a raw, poetic, and beautiful way. There's stuff that we can learn from them about governance, about law, about property rights. And I've given lectures at Hastings Law School on California Indian native property rights. And this whole business that Indians never owned land is nonsense. They own rights to land. And your family might have acorn collecting rights from a certain tree. My family might have wood collecting rights. Somebody else's family might have the rights to trap acorn woodpeckers. And we all have these rights to places.
Who gave these rights?
They were inherited rights, and you got them from your. I think when you have scarce resources, you've got to find a way of allocating it. Mm-hmm. Private property is probably the worst way you can allocate something. But I think that giving rights to people to that property is much saner, because you have rights to a property, I have rights to the same property. I cannot do anything that would impinge on your rights, and we end up having to cooperate with one another so we can all get our rights.
Now,
it's called usufructuary.
Now, let's talk about talismans and what it means to have sacredness and sacred objects. When you go to these rituals and locations, what do you find to be the top 3 sacred items? And have you used them personally as well?
So I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any. I don't believe in any afterlife. I don't believe in any spirits. But I'm nevertheless affected by other people's belief, and I'll support it to the end of my life. I'm stunned by the poetry of it. I'm stunned by the force of it, and I personally don't believe it. But that's. I'm not the center of attention. I'm a publisher. I'm a writer. My job is to convey other people's belief and to put it in the best possible way so it can be understood and it can be felt.
So in a way, you're a conductor.
Yes, I am.
And
I feel that a publisher is like a theater owner. You own a theater, and you make sure the performance is good. You make sure there's no gum on the under the chairs. You make sure that the place is swept, that the lights are there, and you try to sell as many tickets as you can.
So let me ask you a slightly strange question, an aphorism on being a conductor. You know, there's many metals and other objects which conduct electricity. Recently I had a Kabbalah class where we discussed the original ark in the first temple, and there were these 2 cherubs. It was made of acacia wood, I believe, and gold. The 2 cherubs, they didn't touch, but the electricity that was generated from this particular object, which was recreated recently, was so strong that it caused some kind of electrical malfunctions, windows burst, etc. So you are a conductor of great expressions, and yourself an atheist, which is very interesting. So you're kind of a pure conductor without any kind of swaying, right? You're completely open to whatever comes through you. What would you compare yourself to in terms of nature, whether it be gold, some kind of animals, water, all these things that you're talking about, referring to in Native American culture? What are you? Which elements?
I don't see myself as an element. I see myself as maybe an elk.
An elk?
Yeah. So I camped once at the Elwha River, and and I was there for a month, and every morning this herd of elk came across the river. And at first came the alpha male, and the alpha male would come out and begin to bugle. Then came the other males, then the females with does, with fawns, and then came, at the end of it was the elders. And that alpha male would get out there, he would cross the river, he'd bugle the rest in, he'd make sure the herd was across the river. And I think I felt more identity with that alpha male than I have with anything else. I felt it was my job to see the herd across the river. I've seen my family through stuff. I've seen my employees through stuff. I've seen cultures through stuff. And I loved that role.
Now, you brought up a really interesting subject, atheism. I wanted to get your opinion about the creation of life. For example, I have a book out called The Art Studio of Life, where it's a representational thing where a godlike figure draws all these creatures in an art studio and then breathes life into it. It's on Amazon. What would be your myth of creation?
I think it's evolution. I think it's a system in which things happen. I think there's something in there. Hey, listen, I'm not sure I understand it, but I think one of the things I've learned from California Indian world is that the dominant culture uses words and concepts to control and to conquer. Indians use these words and concepts to express ambiguity and wonderment. And I think, and I don't feel I understand how the world was created exactly, but I think that I'm comfortable with that lack of understanding.
You're comfortable or uncomfortable?
I'm comfortable with it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Comfortable. That's beautiful, to be comfortable with lack of understanding. That's an incredibly poetic thing you just said, because a lot of times even the wisest of the wisest, they try so hard to come up with solutions to the greatest feats of the world, and a lot of times we're not capable to be that clever. So
I think the world is much vaster and more mysterious than our mind is capable of comprehending.
I agree with you.
And our mind is rather small, and the universe is very big. And so I think we do the best we can.
Now, you also publish a very beautiful magazine on Native American culture, which recently celebrated its 100th year, correct?
No, it's 30th year.
30th year. And that celebration actually took place in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Tell us about the magazine. I know that it's beautiful. I have a copy at home, so I know it's beautifully published. Where can people buy it? What's it called? And what is everything that goes into it?
It's called News from Native California. And it was, I named it News from Native California because I wanted to keep it humble. I did not want to name it The Great Spirit Speaks or any of that stuff. I wanted it to be news. And it was originally a calendar of events. And it got into these communities. It talked about what was going on. And it talked about what people were doing in these communities. I began it 30 years ago because when I first got into this Indian stuff, there were people around that would break your heart. There were people that had been raised, people like Wallace Burroughs. He died at the age of 104. I knew him. He'd been raised by people that remembered California before the gold rush. Vivian Hailstone and David Risling had been raised by a great aunt who remembered California before the coming of whites. All these people there were people that grew up speaking the old language, and they spoke nothing but the old languages until they were 5 years old and got sent to school. There were people around that were so noble, they were so kind, they were so humorous, they were so connected to their land. They had a tinge of violence. And I don't really know how people could be so violent and so kind at the same time. This is what I saw. And I realized that the world was never going to see people like this again. So I started this magazine to interview them. And I started this magazine it was a eulogy for a world that I thought was fading. Out of that magazine came a cultural revival. And so I came to deliver a eulogy. I found myself present at a birth. And it's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever done and I've ever seen. I think the magazine it's called News from Native California. If you call Heyday in Berkeley, I'll look them up on the website, Heyday, Heyday Books. you'll find ways of getting it.
Now, tell me, for example, stones such as turquoise and coral, which I'm wearing right here, part of the being Capricorn and for protection, how essential are these beautiful elements to you and to what you've seen in Native American culture?
They don't mean very much to me, and I don't think they've ever meant very much to California Indians. The turquoise and these other precious stones meant something to the Hopi, to the Zuni, to people out there in the desert. California was a different world.
Why is that?
Why not?
Okay.
So we have this world. Hey, listen, California had tremendous variety. There were 100 different languages spoken here. Some of them as different as English and Chinese. It had a tribal diversity that was exquisite. You had people living in big cities of over 1,000 people. You had people living in small clans. You had people living in redwood forests, in deserts, in mountains, in valleys. You had people who lived off salmon, people living off seeds, people living off acorn. You had people. There was no one way to be a human being.
Now, about Native American culture, I want to talk about the future and the present. I mean, the past and the future. There are theories that Native Americans came through the Bering Strait, that they were kind of a mixture of what are now Russians and Chinese or Mongolians, which entered this land and became Native Americans. There's many theories. What theory do you believe in, actually? How did the Native Americans begin?
I wasn't there.
Okay. Now, the future of Native Americans. Currently, there's reservations sometimes are not the most safe or place, and not the most maybe placed for the best kind of growth, I'd say. In terms of integration or giving the Native Americans what they need to really, really grow and sustain themselves and really be happy, what would that take? What do you see in the future?
Well, it depends which Native Americans we're talking about. There's
California.
Well, yeah, but there are several 100,000 California Indians around.
Perhaps
they're all different people.
Okay.
So there are people that are Catholics. There are people that are old believers. There are people that want to have professional lives. There are people that want to have traditional lives. I don't think there's any one way to go. And as a Jewish guy from Boston, it's not up to me to determine this.
What I believe is missing in the United States are figures, Native American figures, who are considered people to look up to, like in culture, in our current day culture. There aren't that many of them that are well known. I think that if some Native Americans became, respected authors and singers, etc., to the entire country, I think it would work for everybody's favor.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Indians have suffered tremendous oppression. They've been conquered. They've been brutalized. There's been a genocide. But one of the worst things that's ever happened to them is they've been rendered invisible. And if you're oppressed, if you're suffering racist taunts, at least people are acknowledging that you exist. When you render somebody invisible, that's the end of them.
Are you saying that by putting them on reservations, they're rendered invisible?
No, I think yes, that's part of it. But it's also, I think that the main thing that we need to do is make Indians visible. And they're not going to, and there's not a single kind of Indian. There's all kinds of different Indians. There's all kinds of different ways that people have. They're as individual as we are.
I completely agree with you on this. I've felt for years and years and decades that I really want desperately to see Native Americans in the media doing amazing things, inspiring people and being, the leaders for all these communities. And there's no representation in the major media at this time, and we need it.
Yeah.
We completely agree on this. Now, being of Jewish descent, with our history and culture of being a kind of outcasts throughout history, and maybe a lot of jealousy due to intelligence and things like that, do you believe that there's a big parallel between how Jews and Native Americans have been treated in history?
Yeah, I do. And what I feel that some of my affinity toward California Indians is that I feel that when I grew up, I was as distant from the dominant culture as they were. And I think that it's a sense of being an outsider that I relate to. We're outsiders in different ways. But I think we have the same kind of xenophobia, the same kind of self-regard, the same sense of being a chosen people. I think Indians feel that every culture has a myth about how Worldmaker came and created and led them around to the most beautiful place in existence because they were chosen. And there's something in all those delusions, there's something in all that self-regard, there's something about that sense of alienation from other people. There's something about that sense of clannishness, that there's the us and the them, and I feel a lot of similarities.
Is that both positive and negative?
Yes, clearly.
Yes, I feel that. In terms of the positives of that, what are some of the benefits of, for example, I mean, if everyone had a feeling that they were chosen, that they were a son or daughter or ambiguous to the Creator of any sort, there would be that feeling instilled of self-love in a way. If somebody feels rejected, they may feel a lack of self-love. So in that sense, wouldn't it be great if everybody felt chosen?
What an interesting thought. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it would lead to. I don't think. I think that sense of being chosen is not just the sense of being blessed. It's the sense of being singled out from other people. And if everybody was chosen, nobody would be chosen.
Yes and no. I mean, otherwise you're still chosen from the water, or you're chosen from the lilies. You're chosen as a human. I mean, or, you know.
Hey, listen, there's something built into this human race of ours. There's a flaw built into this human race where we love to define us, the us and the them. And I think that and there's something about that us and the them.
That destroys the world?
I think it can be destructive, it can be beautiful. I've seen it. I've seen it. So Indians have the most wonderful regard for diversity, and they take the diversity very easily. You've never heard Indians argue about religion, about who made the world, about God, about any of this stuff. They never fight about it. There's a sense that the world is more mysterious than our capacity to describe it, and there's something about the. I forget where I was heading with this.
Let's see. We were talking about... we both spaced out into the ether. We were talking about the chosen and the feeling of us versus them.
Yes, versus them. So, but there was a delight in variety. And one of my fondest Jewish prayers, there were all these brachas when I was growing up, and there was the blessing over the wine, the blessing over the bread, there's a blessing when you wake up in the morning, you see your first child. There were all these blessings, and the blessing that I loved the best was when you saw somebody who's terrifying, a cripple, a hunchback, somebody scarred or deformed. The blessing was, "Blessed art thou, Lord our God, who delights in variety."
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Tell me.
And I think with Indians there was a delight in variety. There was this wonderful old guy named Bun Lucas. He was a speaker of Kashaya Pomo, and I got him a job over at Cal to teach at the field studies course, where linguists would end up interviewing somebody. And by interviewing them, they would get some sense of the language, its grammar, its form. They get stories, they get a vocabulary, they get a sound system. So Bun would come down. The only place he knew how to get to was my house in Berkeley. So he'd come down from the reservation. He'd come to my house in Berkeley. He'd be sitting out in front of my house in a car for 4 hours at a time, reading the National Enquirer. So his head was full of space, aliens, of crop circles, and all that other stuff. But I'd bring him down to the class, and he'd discuss the vocabulary. And there was a word that he had, I think it was aha, and it had a guttural in it. And there were 6 gutturals in the Kashaya language, and they're all different. So the students couldn't get it. And they finally got them to say it. When they said, he says, that's not how my Uncle Herman used to say it. My Uncle Herman came from Rockpile, which was a village about 3 miles away. This is how my Uncle Herman said it. They finally got that. That's not how my Aunt Martha said it. And you end up having all these people you ended up having this tribe of about 500 people with 500 different languages. And they delighted in that variety.
Wow. Now, how did you come up with the term heyday?
So my first kid was born in 1970, and I named him Reuben Heyday Margolin because it was the heyday of our lives. It was this hippie world, and he was a gorgeous kid, so I named him Heyday as an act of celebration. My second kid, so Reuben was sick for a few years, and then we were flat broke. It was so broke there was one light bulb in the house. We'd move it from room to room as we go through the house. And so I was working for East Bay Regional Park District then, and there was this old guy from Arkansas named Clyde Oden. And Clyde says, your wife is pregnant. And I said, yeah. He says, if you want money, there's a good way of getting money. I said, I'm not sure I want to hear this. He says, no. He says, if it's a boy, put money in the kid's name. If it's a boy, name him Buck. If it's a girl, name her Penny. So my daughter's named Sadie Cash. When it came time to start a publishing company, I ended up needing a name. So, and I was having trouble finding a name. So I said to my wife, I'm just lousy at finding names. She says, you're really good at naming the kids. So I said, why don't we name it Cash Books? But that didn't sound right, so I named it Heyday Books. And if I thought that it was going to end up growing up to be a major cultural institution, I might have given it another name.
Well, it obviously worked, and it connected to people's unconscious. Let me ask you this. So, heyday, when you came up with that, and you said it was celebration, and it was the heyday, connect me to that moment of energy, that archetypal energy. Basically, didn't you feel the bliss of creation, the bliss of complete purity at that moment?
When I named Reuben Heyday?
When that concept of heyday came to you, what is that feeling like? Does it feel like a spark?
It feels like a relief. It feels so. I knew this Cambodian dancer, and this Cambodian dancer had a posture in which she'd take the sole of her, she'd bent her knee and she had the sole of her foot parallel to the ground. She'd lean on her elbow against the sole of her foot, and she had this lovely body. And I said, what's that position called? She told me the Cambodian name for it, and the name meant when all the cells in the body are aligned for a particular purpose. When you hit something like a good name, when you hit a good poem, when you hit a truth, you feel you're aligned with everything. And what I feel is a lack of tension, flow.
Now that particular feeling, right, that exact feeling of alignment, of flow, when you hit the right truth, is that the essence, the cup of life that everybody really streams for? Is that the best feeling there is?
Like nirvana?
Like nirvana, aside from achieving orgasm, I mean spiritually and psychologically, isn't this the feeling? The heyday feeling?
It's a feeling we should all strive for. And it's probably the best feeling you can have. I think there are other feelings that people have where they're so twisted with hatred, they're so twisted with a sense of self-vindication that they have to, that they can't be happy until they put somebody else down, they're so interested in hierarchies and for them that may not be the best feeling. For them, there's another agenda. But I think for a poet, I think that there's something about it that's also dangerous. There's something about the absolutism that I'm a little bit suspicious of.
How is it absolute? You mean like the feeling is just the feeling of perfection and that's it, or? I
think it can have a fascist tinge to it. I think there's something about it. I think we have to be
aware.
Aware, yeah. And I think that just to be ecstatic is not enough.
Mm-hmm. Just like Dionysus,
Yeah.
bringing people to. Now, interesting. So you felt this moment of brilliance, of sunshine, of perfection, of birth. You felt it. This is the first child you had, correct?
Yeah.
And then that exact energy, and we know that, of course, all children are loved and gorgeous and spectacular in a family. But at the same point in the Jewish religion, the eldest child does contain some kind of very powerful DNA and archetypal energy, which is different than the rest of the kids. And so this particular brilliance then became part of your company, which has become part of this culture, which has become a big part of Berkeley, and is now, you literally have left a big mark in the cultural consciousness of this area. Basically, if the creator, or if creating is this river or whatever body of water or sand that it could be that's ever moving, and people try to deposit things in and try to take things out, you have literally deposited a tremendous amount into our culture. So for that, I, on behalf of many people, thank you.
Well, it hasn't been too painful. I think the stuff is out there in the world. I think what my gift has been is not to create, but to see and to accept. I viewed my life as a publisher. I felt that when I went to Heyday, there was a river of beauty that flowed through the place. And my job, and I'd stand by that river of beauty with a ladle, and I'd pull out chunks of beauty. I'd give them to people around me so that they could become beautiful. And I think that I've always had this feeling of living in a world of abundance, that this world is so filled with gorgeous people, gorgeous things. People are doing stuff that's so amazing to me. And people give me credit for it, but I think that I've just recognized it and not gotten in the way, and I've transmitted it.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Any future plans?
Yeah, I've got tons of future plans.
Anything that's ready to be shared?
Hey, listen, get in touch with Mikhail, and he'll be in touch with me. and I'll put you on a list to receive some sort of invitations to parties and to events and to books that we're doing and other stuff.
As of this taping, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Malcolm, it's been an honor to have such a wise elder speak. And again, you've done a great service to society. And I can feel when you talk that you're not talking just for yourself or as yourself. You're speaking for a greater good. You're really connected to another realm. It's not ego, it's not the self, it's something much deeper when I speak to you. So it's really quiet. And when I look in your eyes, when I talk to you, just to the audience, I'm sharing my honest response to what's happening. Because most of the time when you speak with people, you know that there's so many borders and layers inside that you're talking to some kind of defense mechanisms and overthought opinions a lot of times. But in rare situations, you get to speak to something much deeper than that. You know what I mean?
Well, thanks. For some reason or other, I was not born with much anger. I was not born with much greed. I was born with a sense of the beauty of the world, and it's what I've devoted my life to.
We've been speaking to Malcolm Margolin, the creator, founder of the highly appreciated, respected, and beloved Heyday Books in Berkeley. Thank you.
Well, thank you.